Lavatory. John.
Can.
John.
La toilet.
El baño.
The crapper.
The throne. Let's solve the bat. Droppings. Brown, lumpy, crusty, smelly, watery.
Feces.
Oh, that's nasty,
I doubt very much if anyone thinks very much at all about what happens to the water after they pull the plug.
Tummy starts to hurt. Something like that. Diarrhea.
You don't have it on, do you?
Yeah.
Oops.
If people cut their consumption of water, which they could do, they use twice as much as Europe, then that would cut the flow to the sewage treatment plants. And that helps in every respect.
Probably the 20th century will be remembered as the century in which the whole planet was pillaged.
We have immense pollution in the lakes, and what would we do with all that?
Without water, you can't live, and if the sewage is not cleaned up, then we'd all die. Because you need water to survive.
And you can't drink dirty water.
In the first half of this program, we looked at why we need to treat sewage. We saw how a sewage treatment plant kills the organisms that cause disease. We also saw how the treatment plant removes the organic material that causes eutrophication in our lakes, rivers, and oceans. In this part of the program, we'll be exploring some of the problems with how we currently treat our sewage, and we'll look at how we can do things differently in the future.
There are several concerns with conventional treatment. First of all, there's the issue of hazardous waste. Sewage treatment plants work just fine at getting the human waste out of sewage. But what about all the other things we flush down our drains?
Sewage, particularly sewage derived from large urban centers, is a cocktail of unknown substances. Anything that anyone puts down the drain ends up in the sewer system.
How hard would it be to get rid of the chemicals from household cleaners such as Drano or oven cleaners?
As a sewage treatment plant, we're designed to remove carbonaceous BOD, the organic matter that's present in the wastewater. We're not designed to neutralize the different components of Drano or any other toxic chemical.
Oh, my main concern is if all those chemicals are going out into the lake, when we take it back in for regular drinking water, if they can't take it out going out, then that means they can't take out those harmful chemicals going into our taps, right? So we're going to be drinking that.
Typically speaking, water treatment plants aren't designed to remove these items. If they make it into the lake, they're going to be diluted, so there's certainly no reason to, for a major concern. They will be diluted, but still, slowly but surely.
So if sewage treatment plants can't remove hazardous waste, the best way to stop household cleaners and industrial chemicals from getting into our water is not to put them down the drain in the first place.
I don't know, I just really thought that once it goes down your toilet that they'd probably treat it properly, but after coming here today and listening to John, seems like they don't treat everything that comes down here, and some things do go by.
I guess it also comes back to us. I guess we shouldn't be using those chemicals.
Dumping something down the drain is not a simple matter of out of sight, out of mind.
So the chemicals we're flushing down our drains create a problem, either for us or people living downstream. But all that water we're flushing down our drains is a problem too. On average, wastewater is 99% water and only 1% waste. The trouble is, the more dilute our sewage is, the harder the sewage treatment plant has to work to get that waste out. Just for starters, how much water do you use every time you flush a toilet?
I never really thought about how many liters goes into flushing the toilet. It's just a lot, I suppose. I think it's about 6 liters. 19 liters? Wow.
Okay.
Every day, Canadians produce 360 liters of wastewater each. That's enough to fill 3 large bathtubs. And when you multiply that by all the people in Canada, that's a lot of water.
In Toronto, the guy responsible for removing the waste from all that wastewater is this man, Bob Pickett.
We ought to make the best use of the water that we need and not overuse the water.
Do you have any idea what you're doing?
No. Fool. The water company spend much time purifying that water.
Do you work for them or something?
We are higher than that. We are the surgeons of the environment. We are the conservation ninjas.
Your training in the conservation that starts now.
One consumes a lot of water while showering, so why not humongous gust of wind?
Oh, can't I just take shorter showers?
With a faucet aerator, you save this much water. Save water by getting a toilet down, which usually costs about $20. However, if you're too lazy to set it up or happen to not have any money available at the time, anything big, solid, and useless will suffice. Before we part, let us reflect on a haiku.
If it's yellow, let it mellow. If it's brown, flush it down. That wasn't a haiku.
We're ninjas, not artsy poets.
Wow, I've learned so much ways to conserve water in under 2 minutes. I feel so enlightened. Does that mean I can be a conservation ninja just like you guys?
No, but you've learned a lot. That's all that matters. Farewell, people. Use your newfound skills wisely.
If you educate people and you tell people what it costs to purify each gallon, then they might realize that maybe they shouldn't wash down their driveway every night with their hose for an hour.
This is Deborah Kiles. She lives 2 kilometers from Toronto's biggest sewage treatment plant. She's co-chair of a citizens group that wants to make sewage treatment in Toronto safer and more environmentally sound. Deborah Kiles does agree with Bob Pickett on the importance of water conservation, but they don't see eye to eye on this next issue, using chlorine to disinfect wastewater.
Chlorine kills fish, kills plant life. Wherever it's shooting out into a lake or a river, you don't find anything living.
But chlorine is the most widely used method of disinfecting wastewater because it's very effective at its job, killing bacteria and viruses. Chlorine is a big debate.
It's relatively inexpensive versus other types of systems that you use. The other thing is its effectiveness. It's a very effective disinfectant.
Chlorine is a disaster. People are doing research, and there are people that feel that chlorine is the basis of the most toxic compounds. like things like dioxins, PCBs. It passes through the food chain. It's not biodegradable when you eat it. It doesn't break down, and it's toxic.
There are other ways to disinfect wastewater, like ozonation, for example, or ultraviolet radiation. They are less dangerous than chlorine, but the technologies are newer, they have to be more carefully controlled to work effectively, and they cost significantly more than chlorine.
Chlorine is the #1 means of disinfecting wastewater worldwide for a number of reasons. But yes, there are health and safety concerns that are being raised.
We really have very little idea of the long-term effect of being exposed to these compounds.
Finally, there's a concern about what we do with sludge, all that solid stuff that was separated out from the wastewater. At the Toronto main treatment plant, they incinerate it, and incineration is an issue for Deborah Kiles.
It's expensive, it's environmentally damaging, it's really, you're taking a wonderful resource and you're burning it.
When you think about it, sludge is really just organic material. It's good for the soil. It acts as a fertilizer and contains a lot of nutrients. In fact, there are several cities in North America that take sludge from their sewage treatment plants and spread it on farmland. So incineration is not the only way to dispose of sludge. But there are a few drawbacks to putting sludge on farmland.
That your opportunities to apply it to your own land are limited, especially with the quantities of sludge that you're dealing with.
The other drawback to putting sludge on farmland is that urban sludge is not just human waste.
Okay, why are we not bagging the dried sludge now and selling it as compost or whatever? Basically because of the industrial buildup, the commercial buildup in metropolitan Toronto. There are a lot of people dumping into the sewer system things they shouldn't be.
The biggest concern with sludge is what goes into it. And cities and industrial areas generally have a huge percentage of heavy metals and toxic chemicals. You can't put it on the land if it's filled with heavy metals and toxic chemicals because it gets into the groundwater and it gets into plants, so you can't use it in any edible food plants.
So you either need source control to stop chemicals from getting into your wastewater, or you need some kind of pre-treatment that gets the chemicals out.
If you pre-treat sewage sludge and you have an effective form of source control, it's the best thing to do with it is to use it as a resource and put it back onto the land.
So far, we've looked at how we currently treat our sewage, and we've talked about how we could improve that process. But what we haven't asked is, are there any other ways to do it?
Eels.
Vinegar eels. Did you remember those vinegar eels? Vinegar eels.
This may not look like the main sewage treatment plant, but wetlands like these can effectively clean wastewater. It doesn't smell like a treatment plant either. And instead of producing a pile of sludge, this system grows a healthy crop of reeds. Ed Lemon is a retired professor living in Niagara-on-the-Lake, Ontario. When the town's existing sewage treatment system couldn't meet stricter government regulations, he set up this experimental system with the support of a local citizens group.
This is not a normal swamp. This is a constructed wetland designed to do the job that we want it to do.
The project is called SWAMP, the Sewage Waste Amendment Marsh Project. It filters the wastewater after it's passed through settling lagoons, which remove much of the solids.
There are two major components we need to talk about, and that's the role of the plants and the role of the root bed itself, the media itself. The plants provide a source of energy or sugars to the bacteria that live on their roots, and it's the bacteria that live on their roots that do the work. They digest the organic matter and it turns to carbon dioxide and water. And also the roots provide oxygen down in the root bed for the bacteria to do the job.
What happens to this plant in the winter and what happens to the treated water?
The way these root beds work is that we put fluid on the top and let it percolate down through to the bottom. And we let the top freeze, and the freezing of the top doesn't bother the system that much.
The question is, Can a bunch of reeds polish wastewater as well as the physical chemical system the city wants to install? So far, the results are good.
Well, you see it's as clean as a whistle. No smell to it. Clear. It's free of everything. Just about.
The swamp system can remove approximately 90% of the organic matter, 70% of the nitrogen, and 95% of the phosphorus. Ammonia levels are still too high during some parts of the year, but Ed Lemon is working on that one.
Do you think this process will replace a waste treatment plant?
That's a tough question to answer because it depends on the amount of land that's available in an urban area to be devoted to such a system. Now, the city of Orlando, Florida, they've got a 1,200-acre system that treats quite a bit of sewage, and very successfully too. It's natural, so you don't have to use chemicals. And it's natural in that you don't have to haul sludge away and put it somewhere. It's natural in that you could make a reserve or a conservation area for wildlife, and people could use it. They could walk around and see birds nesting and ducks and other wild animals.
Constructed wetlands offer a lot of advantages. The major drawback to using them in urban areas is that they need much more land than most cities have available. This is John Todd. For the past 25 years, he's been working in a field called ecological engineering, designing special ecosystems to do specific things.
We don't know what nature knows. We don't know bugger all, but we can marvel at the fact that it works so well.
One of John Todd's inventions is an ecosystem that treats sewage. It has many of the advantages of constructed wetlands, but it takes up much less space, and because it's in a greenhouse, it works efficiently all year round. He calls the system a living machine.
The philosophy is to make as much life from sludge in the system as is possible, and to remove from the system, instead of sludge, trees, plants, medical plants, all kinds of things that can be subsequently reused.
We looked at a living machine that treats wastewater at the Body Shop's Canadian head office in Toronto.
This is a living machine. It's approximately 4,000 square feet and was designed by Canadian Dr. John Todd. And what it does is take all the wastewater from the building, bring it back into the building for non-potable purposes. It starts at this far end of the building, underneath all the pipes. It brings in all the sewage from there, falls all the way underneath here, into these aerobic tanks on the far side, the white tanks.
Remember how in secondary treatment, the bacteria digest solids in the presence of oxygen? These tanks contain bacteria, and exactly the same digestion process is happening inside. Next, the wastewater flows into this pond. The algae and plants in the pond take up nutrients from the wastewater, and the snails and fish eat the solids.
Underneath these rocks is a marsh, and the water takes 2.5 days to travel from the pond through the marsh to the final filter where the water is brought back into the building.
By the time the wastewater has gone through the tanks, and the pond, and then the marsh, almost all of the organic material has been removed, and the nutrients have been significantly reduced. Then the water is disinfected with ultraviolet light to kill any harmful bacteria or viruses that might be left. Some of the water is pumped into these cylinders, and the Body Shop plans to use it for aquaculture.
If you compare it with conventional secondary sewage treatment plant, it does a much better job. It produces much less sludge. It produces higher quality water. And perhaps most importantly, It uses no hazardous chemicals in the process.
You would notice that there's a sewage treatment facility in this building. Because when you looked outside from here, it's like you just see a bunch of plants. You don't notice that there's raw sewage.
It's a lot nicer looking. It's less smelly than the treatment plant.
I didn't think it was this small, and I didn't think it would be this high.
The major limitation at this particular time, which will go away, is that the living machine is a very new idea. Most waste treatment engineers, if confronted with some fish and clams and some emergent aquatic plants, would kind of feel as if they'd walked into the wrong room.
Why did you guys decide to put this in?
Why? Well, we wanted to show that rather than sending out all of our dirty water and everything out to the sewage system, we thought we can clean it and bring it back for our own use. It helps our community.
I think it's a good example for other factories to consider for their sewage.
What you're seeing here is the idea of bringing waste treatment right inside buildings and let the water that leaves the building be as clean as the water that comes in the building. And that's where the real future lies.
At some points in the past, we've used sewage to fertilize the land. At other times, we've thrown it in the streets, in lakes, rivers, and oceans. You've seen how we treat it today. What about the future?
If I could redesign urban sewage treatment, the most important thing would be to use less water in the first place. So we had less material in the sewage treatment plant, and it could do a better job of removing what's in there.
I think we're going to see neighborhoods wanting to capture their wastes and recycle them into positive pathways.
In the highly urbanized area, the opportunity to have radical changes from what we have today, I think, are rather limited. That's really because the highly urbanized area are using most of the land that they have.
The old infrastructures, which in most modern industrial cities were established around 1900, they're rotting away, and we really don't have the money to go trying to recreate those when it's not necessary anymore.
A lot of those things are going to involve the public at large. They have to, because they're the ones that make decisions on what they use, what they consume, and what they consider acceptable.
Technology will change, the means of treating the wastewater will change, and we always have to be willing to accept the new technologies.
Most of us don't give sewage a second thought. That's too bad, because sewage is an important issue for us and for the environment.
I mean, you use water for just about everything you do.
If we use up all this fresh water, if we don't treat it right, we're not gonna have any water to use.
I think the great challenge of our time is to recover the planet that we've been pissing on for a century or more.
Hi. Okay,
Okay. For all you parents and teachers out there, we did not write on the walls. Don't write on the walls, kids.
The magic of TV.